explores the dramatic stories of how journalists brought news about the war to a divided nation. Well, tonight we are so thrilled and honored to be joined by four courageous women who covered the Vietnam War. Their stories are both unique and fascinating, and we look forward to hearing from them. The panelists are Denby Fawcett, who quit her job as a reporter for the Honolulu Star-Bulletin in 1966 when her editors refused her request to cover the war. Ready to leave for Vietnam as a freelancer, she was hired by the Honolulu Advertiser and was sent to Saigon and reported on everything from Marine combat patrols to Buddhist uprisings. She is currently a columnist for the Honolulu Civil Beat. Yorate Kazikis used her $500 winnings from the game show Password to buy a one-way plane ticket to Saigon, where she covered the war as a freelance reporter. She reported from many battle scenes, including the siege of Khe Sanh, where she was wounded while interviewing Marines for WOR radio. She is now president of the Kazikis Family Foundation, which supports causes for girls and women in the developing world. Edith Lederer was the first woman.
And I had a line for a few.
Okay.
How did you get there?
I got there because it seems hard to believe that someone like in our day that Barbara would be a Pentagon correspondent, because the women of my day worked reporting on women on women's pages. And we reported on things like parties and gardening and cooking. And we never really made the news because women's lives were so confined that we had our section, but the stories of women weren't even news because their lives were tiny and circumscribed. So I got very bored at my job, and I was reading papers all the time, and I decided that I wanted to go to Vietnam. So when I asked my editors, I was the lowest person in that women's section covering the parties the party reporter didn't want to cover. When I went in and said I want to go to Vietnam and be a war reporter, they just about fell out of their chairs laughing. So I thought, oh well, I think I'm just going to go on my own and be a freelancer. So,
and this, you can see it there, but this is you.
Yes.
I want, if you're not getting it, we're going to show you these women as they practice their journalism in the middle of a war zone. So what year was this?
This was 66, and I was getting ready to go when the editor of the other paper, the morning paper, approached me, and he asked if I would like to be a reporter, but they didn't pay my way. I had to pay my own way to get there, and he promised me $35 per story. And at the time, I was making $80, so that meant if I wrote 3 stories, that would be a raise. And then after I got there, I was 6 months later hired as a full-time reporter, and he paid me back for paying my way.
Yorate, tell us a little bit how you got there.
Well, I was working at Look magazine as a researcher, just reading day in, day out coverage of Vietnam, and there was nothing else going on at that time. It was the biggest story, and it was my generation covering it. I knew I wanted to be a journalist, and like Denby, I asked Look magazine to send me, and they said absolutely not, inexperienced and female. And same thing, I quit Look magazine, bought my one-way ticket to Saigon, and showed up as a freelancer. And you had to get credentials, you needed outlets that you were writing for, so I got my press pass and I was ready to go.